Esau, you in motherfucking trouble. That's all I gotta say. I'd like to start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Welcome to another live lesson. Esau. The name of this one is, You Devils Have an Insatiable Appetite for Blood. And what you're looking at in front of you is an article that reads, Death Toll from the Slave Trade, the African, really is the Israelite, holocaust, 60 million dead at the hands of white Christian imperialism. So much for your plantation Christianity, you know. And you goddamn devils out there, you have benefited from this, man. Especially you devils that's pushing that Christian doctrine bullshit, that plantation Christianity. You have benefited off the backs, you know, the sweat, blood, and tears of the so-called Negroes, that which are the tribe of Judah that were brought to this country. Then you had the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Levi that were brought down to the Caribbeans and different places in the Americas. You know, you've also benefited off the backs of the Gadites and the Reubenites, so-called North American Indians, Seminole Indians, and you've also benefited off the backs of the rest of the other 10 tribes here in the Americas, throughout the Caribbean islands, Central and South America, and Mexico, and up in Canada also. So you got a lot to pay for, you know. And this right here, this is something that happened. And when I read this 60 million dead at the hands of white Christian imperialism, I said this is just an estimate, because it's impossible for them to keep records like that. They weren't keeping records like that before, you know. So you know, it could be double, triple, quadruple, or more, you know, that happened. This is just estimations. And then when you read through the article, the population of so-called Africa just didn't grow. Why? Because they were pillaging and taking thousands and thousands and millions, you know, of Israelites as slaves, you know. And it was here, they were bringing them here to the Americas. The Arabs, so-called Muslims, were bringing Jake in captivity throughout, you know, other parts of Europe and other places, you know. So you have Jake all over the place, you know, through this slave trade. All right. And that's not to mention the northern kingdom that were already here. So I got this article here. What I'm going to do is read some of it, get some of the highlights of it. Then I have another one called Genocide of Indigenous Peoples, you know, dealing with the 10 tribes and how they massacred them over here, you know. So you devils have an insatiable appetite for blood, but the Most High, he gonna take care of your overindulgent, blood dripping pleasures up in here, because it's up in the book. That's an inside joke. I just changed the lyrics a little bit. All right, so now let's get into it. It says the largest slave trade in the history of the world was created by white Christian Europeans, which are Edomites. All right. So much for Jesus loves you and all this. These devils sitting there trying to break things down to you, you know, pushing a picture of Caesar Borgia / Serapis Crispus in your face, or Christus in your face, telling you to love them while they whipping your back, raping your women, castrating you, killing you, lynching you, you know, making you work free slave for free slave labor without paying you wages, when the Lord is against that. Let's go real quick to the book of Malachi. I believe that's Malachi 3 and 5, if I'm not mistaken. Malachi 3 and 5, it says, And I will come near to you to judgment, and I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers, because America was set up under sorcery, under witchcraft, and against the adulterers, and they are adulterers because they would allow Jake to get married and then go rape their wives. And against false swearers, they are false swearers. They say that the Most High is a so-called black man, his son is a so-called white man. They say his son is a so-called white man, so on and so forth, you know. They swear up and down that they're the people of the Lord. It says, and they make you swear it on the Bible. So they're false swearers, man, all the way around. And against those that what? Oppress the hireling in his wages. The widow and the fatherless, and turn aside the stranger from his right, and fear not me, saith the Lord Yahweh Shemel Shai of hosts. So when they took the Bible, they say they believe in the Bible, but everything they did went against their Bible. So much so that they ripped pages and books out of the Bible to make what was called the slave Bible, so that they wouldn't give anyone the idea, that they were Israelites. And that's exactly what it was. They seen how slaves revolted against their masters, and they didn't want that same thing happening because they had too many of those slave revolts going on. So now let's go back. It says, before it was over, as many as 60 million Africans would be killed, which are Israelites, not Africans, for the profit of white Christian imperialism. And that's where you get that white privilege, and that's what it's all about. As long as Esau can tell a story and be on top, then you can come and rub elbows with him, so to speak. And that's why they're the ones that control, they control what's being pushed out there as far as religion and stuff is concerned. But now the Hebrew Israelite thing is a problem because there's no control over it. It's being guided by the spirit of Yahweh B'Shem El Shai. Like the scripture say, you don't know where the spirit is coming from and you don't know where the spirit is going, because the spirit is like the wind. A key reason for the high death toll was the tidal wave of war and desolation that the slave trade unleashed into the heart of Africa. Huge numbers of people died being marched to the coast of Africa from the interior, as well as in the endless series of wars produced by the quest for new slaves. They had people searching for new slaves. They were selling slaves at such a fast pace that they had to search for more. Millions more would die in the concentration camps at both ends of the sea journey. Yeah, because they had them locked up before they can actually take them across them ships. And significant numbers would die due to the appalling conditions on the slave ships. You see, the financial profits of the slave trade helped build this economic foundation, the economic foundations of America, and that's true. This country was built off the backs, of the so-called Negroes, which are the tribe of Judah. But they also took over the Gadites, the Reubenites, the Issacharites. It was not just the South. Northern business interests made huge profits too. And that's why they so-called emancipated the slaves, to bring them up to the north so that they can have cheap labor. It is difficult to estimate the exact death toll that resulted from the transatlantic slave trade. Why? Because it's just estimates. There wasn't exactly people measuring these numbers at the time. What we looked at are historical estimates, but you know who measured it? The Most High measured it. He knows exactly how many Israelites they killed. And Lord's will, when we get into these scriptures, you'll see of how many people may have died in capture during the voyage at sea, due to disease, starvation, and back-breaking labor in the New World. And you devils are going to do some back-breaking labor, man. But what is certain is that the slave trade was a genocide against the African people, which are the Israelite people. The transatlantic slave trade was also the largest long-distance coerced movement of people in history, meaning forced. The estimates of the numbers killed during the transatlantic slave trade varies anywhere between 6 to 150 million. The official UN estimate is 17 million. However, we ourselves would be inclined to agree the figure of 60 million, given all the variables here, including the fact that during the entire period of the slave trade, Africa's population did not increase. Some may argue that it was because Europe had advanced medicine and technology while Africans didn't, yet during this era, Asia wasn't exactly at a sophisticated technological level either, but their population nearly doubled. We believe the stagnation of Africa's population is as a byproduct of the transatlantic slave trade. And you see here the polls in Europe, Asia, and Africa, 1600s, 1700s, and 1800s, and you see the numbers remain pretty much stagnant for the continent of Africa. It said the transatlantic slave trade took place across the Atlantic Ocean from the 15th through the 19th century. The vast majority of those that were enslaved were deported to the New World, mainly on a triangular trade route and its middle passage. Most of those captured were what? West Africans. And what have we been telling you, brothers? That that the Israelites, when they fled the onslaught of the Romans back in 70 AD, fled into the interiors of Africa. You know, some of them were in North Africa, but a good portion of them migrated to the West Coast. Why? Because the Lord was setting it up for a later date, you know, where they would be put into cargo slave ships and shipped over to the Americas according to the history, Salakis, according to prophecy. Deuteronomy 28 and 68. And this is why these devils try to say, well, no, that don't mean that, because they said that they won't sell themselves, and you know, this, that, the other. They're gonna try to sell themselves to slavery. Nobody's gonna buy them, so that's not. Man, shut the hell up. Every time the devil opens his pie hole, man. But we're gonna show you that. Look, Deuteronomy 28:68. And the Lord Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. We walked into Egypt the first time. We walked out of Egypt when we were freed. You know, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And we haven't been able to go back to our land. You know, now you have some Israelites that are going back there, but they shouldn't really be there. It's like they're trying to force the hand of the Lord. You know, Ben Ami and then them other One West groups that come out of One West, you know, that are going over there to the land of Israel, shouldn't really be there, because the Lord is going to destroy that place. So it's obvious that they don't know the prophecy or the scriptures. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. They'd be waiting for the Lord to bring them back. These devils ain't going to give you that land. They took it from the Palestinians. And they go into war with the Palestinians. You think they're just going to, oh, yeah, you're right. You're the Israelites here. We'll just give you the land. No, you ain't going to get that land, man. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. That's see, no man shall buy you. And the slaves that were brought here were bought. This is old English way of saying no man shall save you. Now let's go to the actual word buy. It could be applied something bought, but it also applies to redeeming. Qanah. To get, acquire, create, buy, possess. Right? Let's go. It says of the Most High originating, creating, redeeming his people. See? So it's a redemption. So no man's going to be able to redeem you. Why? Because Yahweh Shai, when he comes back, he's coming back to what? To redeem the purchased possession. Let's get that real quick. That's another lesson, Lord, is what I wanted to do through the Spirit. Let's go to Ephesians, the first chapter. I want to get that real quick. Ephesians 1:13. In whom ye also trusted, after that you heard the word of truth, the gospel of your salvation, in whom also after you believed, you were sealed with that Holy Spirit of promise. See, so that's the sealing of the elect, which is the earnest of our inheritance until the redemption of the purchased possession, unto the praise of his glory. So we're waiting until the redemption of the purchased possession. You see? And this is what we're waiting for. The redemption of the purchased possession. Why? Because the Lord said that no man shall buy you. No man's going to save you. And when you read in Deuteronomy 28, I believe there's either one more time or two more times where it says the same thing, but it uses a different Hebrew word. No man shall save you. Now, when we scroll down here to the book of Deuteronomy, because these are all the places in the scriptures where this word Qanah appears. Right? So when we scroll down here to the book of Deuteronomy, the 32nd chapter, right? What do you have? Do ye thus requite the Lord, O foolish people and unwise? This is the Lord speaking to Israel. Right? Let's go to this real quick. Gamal, which is camel, to deal fully with recompense. Right? You can't recompense the Lord. There's no recompense. The only recompense back then was what? Was the shedding of a particular animal's blood in order to receive the atonement for the sins. So it says, "O foolish people and unwise, is not he thy father? He's our father, that hath what? Brought thee. Bought thee, Salakia." And what do you see there for the word bought? Qanah, which is what? Redeemed thee. So no man shall buy you, meaning no man shall redeem you. Why? Because when you go into the law, there was a law in the Bible where if your brother fell in decay and was sold into slavery, or sold, his possession was sold, you that had the money, you can go and redeem him. You could ransom him. You could give the person money that he owed the money to, and take him back to yourself and redeem him. But this was going to be so devastating that you were going to be sold as slaves and slave men and slave women, that there will be no man to redeem you, no man to ransom you. You see? And that's what this is talking about. This is not talking about actual, they won't buy you. Because it's stupid, like Elder Pastor said, it's stupid for somebody to want to be a slave and no, I'm not going to buy you. They'll just snatch him up. And like Elder Pastor said too, who's going to get that money? You know? Usually you sell something because you know somebody's getting payment. But anyway, going back to the article, the number of they were captured in West Africa. The number of Africans brought to the New World were so great, the Israelites, that they became the largest number of immigrants to be brought to the New World before the late 18th century. By 1820, nearly 4 Africans or Israelites for every 1 European had crossed the Atlantic, and about 4 out of every 5 females that traversed the Atlantic were from Africa, because they were Israelites. And this was the Lord setting it up, because didn't the Lord say that in the latter times he was going to bring those other 3 tribes over here? And that's what happened. Those other 3 tribes came over to this side of the world to be joined up eventually with the rest of the 10 tribes that were already here. How about that? This was not the first time in history that Africans or Israelites were kidnapped from their homes and enslaved. Europeans and Muslims engaged in the slave trade for centuries before the colonization of the Americas. Yet the transatlantic slave trade further bled Africa of its people and resources. While it was not the only slave trade in Africa, it was the largest in terms of sheer volume and intensity. Why? Because this was the Most High had the spirit on these devils for greed. They could never have enough. You see? As Elika Mbokolo wrote in Le Monde Diplomatique, I guess that's French. The African continent was bled of its human resources via all possible routes across the Sahara, through the Red Sea, from the Indian Ocean ports, and across the Atlantic. At least 10 centuries of slavery for the benefit of the Muslim countries from the 9th to the 19th. 4 million enslaved people exported via the Red Sea, another 4 million through the Swahili ports of the Indian Ocean, perhaps as many as 9 million along the Trans-Saharan caravan route, and 11 to 20 million, depending on the author, across the Atlantic Ocean. The number of lives lost in procurement of slaves remains a mystery. Why? Because they don't have the actual numbers. And that's why, you know what, I was going to say, I'll read it again, Lord's will. Let's read this. Isaiah 26:21. For behold, the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity, because the Lord is coming back to redeem us. He's coming back to kick ass. The earth also shall what? Disclose her blood. Why? Because there are a set number of Israelites whose blood was shed here, as it says in Revelation 17, that they shed the blood of the saints, that could not be estimated. They don't have an actual number. Remember, these are all estimates. They weren't record keeping back then like they do now. It says, and shall no more cover her slain. Why? Because they're covered. Why? Because no one knows the exact amount. No one knows how many. And that's just dealing with the tribe of Judah. Let's not get into Gad, so-called North American Indians. Let's not get into Reuben, the so-called Seminole Indians. Let's not get into Issachar, the so-called Mexicans, the Caribbean islands up in Canada, Central America, South America, Mexico. Come on, man. So you devils have an insatiable appetite for blood, but the Most High got something for you. He got a cure for you. We know you can't help it, devil, but the Lord got a cure for you. So the word disclose, galah, to uncover, remove. See, so whatever was covered up in the soil of this land, the Lord is going to make it right. And that's why he's bringing the devastation that he's bringing through the missiles. And Elder Ayatan did something where he posted an actual picture of of glass jars filled with sand from different places in America where it was tainted with a slave blood or something along those lines. So this place is polluted, and that's why it's got to be destroyed. All right, so let's go back. But according to the author of American Holocaust, it is likely that the number of slaves who died in the procurement is equal to the number who survived. A database compiled in the 1990s put the figure for the transatlantic slave trade at more than 11 million people. That's just their figure. That's an estimate. For a long time, an accepted figure was 15 million. Although this has recently been revised downward, Patrick Manning, the author of The Slave Trade, estimates that about 12 million slaves entered the Atlantic trade between the 16th and 19th century, and about 1.5 million died on board ships. Others have put the estimate of ship deaths at 2.2 million. So they're at variance. They don't know, they can't come to an agreement because there's no way to calculate that. But the Most High knows. 4 million died inside Africa after capture, and many more died young. These estimates also do not cover how many slaves died in the New World. See, so this is just dealing with extracting them from Afri, you know, which is the land of Ham, right? Putting them in those concentration camps that they had. There was some dying there. Putting them on them nasty stinking ass ships where some of them died. Been bringing them over here where they died of disease. Or too hard labor or heartache, you know, so on and so forth. It says, all right, so, you know, you brothers can read the rest of this if you want. I left it in the description box. You know, it goes into more detail, you know, but that's it on that. Let's go to the genocide one now. It says the genocide of indigenous people is the mass destruction of entire communities of indigenous people. Which you had Gad, Reuben, you had Issachar. Down in the islands, you had the Ephraim, Manasseh, you know, Simeon, so on and so forth. Indigenous peoples are understood to be people whose historical and current territory has become occupied by colonial expansion or the formation of a state by a dominant group such as a colonial power. While the concept of genocide was formulated by Raphael Lemkin in the mid-20th century, the expansion of various European colonial powers such as the Spanish and British empires and the subsequent establishment of colonies on indigenous territory frequently involved acts of genocidal violence against indigenous groups in the Americas, Australia, Africa, and Asia. According to Lemkin, colonization was in itself intrinsically genocidal. You see? He saw the genocide as a two-stage process. The first being the destruction of the indigenous population's way of life. And that's what they did. They took Gad, they subjugated them, and then they ripped their language from them, their customs. They ripped everything out of them by separating the families. It says in the second stage, the newcomers imposed their way of life on the indigenous group. And that's where you had re-education places. And this is something that's systematic. You know, this so-called New World Order is all about that. Re-education camps. You know, you have the red, the blue, and the green or yellow list. And usually the green or yellow list was what? For re-education. Those that can be reformed. Reformed to what? Reformed to Esau's bullshit. They're what? Plantation Christianity. Death toll from the slave trade, the African Holocaust, the Israelite Holocaust. 60 million dead at the hand of what? White Christian imperialism. Come on, man. So according to David Maybury Lewis, imperial and colonial forms of genocide are enacted in two main ways. Either through the deliberate clearing of territories of their original inhabitants in order to make them exploitable for purposes of resource extraction or colonial settlements, or through enlisting indigenous people as forced laborers, you know, because they made Gad work also. And they look, man. The when you go down to when you go down into the Caribbean islands, how do you hell do you think that what you think they did to the natives once they subjugated them? They put them in slavery. They made them dig out caves so they were hollowed out, looking for silver and gold. They will work them to death. So sometimes 24 hours a day till they just died of exhaustion. So these devils got rich off of the backs of the Israelites. Judah, Benjamin, Levi, Simeon, Ephraim, Manasseh, Gad, all the way down to Issachar. It says in colonial or imperialist projects of resource extraction, the designation of specific events as genocidal is often controversial. Now we're going to jump down. To Native American genocide. From the colonial period of the early 1500s through the 20th century, the indigenous peoples of the Americas have experienced massacres, tortures, terror, sexual abuse, systematic military occupation, removal from ancestral territories, the forced removal of Native American children to military-like boarding schools, allotment, and a policy of termination. You know, then on the islands, the so-called Spaniards, they had something called the encomienda, which is something similar. You see? Because all the tribes caught hell, man. Historians and scholars whose work has examined this history in the context of genocide have included historian David Stannard, the anthropological demographer Russell Thornton, as well as scholar activists such as Vince Deloria Jr., Russell Means, and Ward Churchill. Stannard compares the events of the colonizations in the Americas in the definition of genocide in the 1948 UN Convention and writes that, in light of the UN language, even putting aside some of its looser constructions, it is impossible to know what transpired in the Americas during the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, and not to conclude that it was genocide. That's exactly what it was, genocide. They were killing them. They were killing our ancestors. They were dropping like flies. They were shedding their blood, man. And there's so much history that it's impossible to cover everything. And that's just what's known. What we don't know, the Lord knows. And He's going to reveal it in His time. But we have more than enough evidence that this devil has an insatiable appetite for blood. And the Lord's going to deal with him. He got the cure for you. He got the cure for you, E. Thornton describes as genocide the direct impact of warfare, violence, and massacres, many of which had the effect of wiping out entire ethnic groups. Political scientist Gunter Louis says that even if up to 90% of the reduction in the Indian population was a result of disease, that leaves a sizable death toll caused by mistreatment and violence. And that's just a hypothetical question, point of view. Native American Studies Professor Roxanne Dunbar-Ortiz says proponents of the default position emphasize attrition by disease despite other causes equally deadly, if not more so. In doing so, they refuse to accept that the colonization of America was genocidal by plan. And that's exactly what it was. It was genocidal by plan, not simply the tragic fate of the population lacking immunity to disease. And what does the Lord say? Let's go to Colossians 3:25. It says, "But he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which he hath done, and there is no respect of persons." Galatians 6:7. "Be not deceived, the Most High is not mocked, for whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap." So going back, by 1900, the indigenous population in the Americas declined by more than 80%, and by as much as 98% in some areas. The effects of disease such as smallpox, measles, and cholera during the first century of colonization contributed greatly to the death toll. while violence, displacement, and warfare by colonizers against the Indians contributed to the death toll in subsequent centuries. As detailed in American philosophy, from Wounded Knee to the present, it is also apparent that the shared history of the hemisphere is one framed by the dual tragedies of genocide and slavery. Both of which, because they put the 10 tribes in slavery also. They show you in that series, the Borgia series that they had on Showtime, I believe it was, where they actually brought a Taino slave in front of the King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, and he had a yoke. He was chained up. Both of which are part of the legacy of the European invasion of the past 500 years. Indigenous people, north and south, were displaced, died of disease, and were killed by Europeans through slavery, rape, and war. In 1491, about 145 million people lived in the Western Hemisphere. By 1691, the population of indigenous Americans had declined by 90 to 95%, or by around 130 million people. All right, so that's it on that. So now let's get into some of these precepts. Ezekiel 35 and 1 on down. And this is right here, Ezekiel 35 is the cure for you devils. The cure. And I know, like I was that Diana Ross? If there's a cure for this, I don't want it. Well, you're going to swallow it down, devil. You're going to take this cure and swallow it down. Ezekiel 35:1. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir and prophesy against it. Now, it's not talking about the actual mountains in Mount Seir. It's talking about the people that were inhabiting that land. And where are they at now? They're here in America. Because you could say America is Mount Seir. Mount Seir was a range of mountains that looked like hairs on a person's arm. America today, all these different cities, they have skyscrapers that are reminiscent of the caves. Down in Mount Seir, the land of Edom, in the Caucasus Mountains, and wherever these devils were in the mountains at. Because they like that comfortable atmosphere. It's in their spirit to be high up at high altitudes like that. Jake has a problem with heights. They look down and oh Lord, you know. It said, and prophesy against it, and say unto it, Thus saith the Lord power, behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee. So a mountain also represents a government. So the government of America, which is representative of Mount Seir, the land of Uz, Basra, you know, Babylon the Great, Nineveh, you know, so on and so forth. And I will stretch out mine hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. And this is not talking about the actual land, because the actual land, there's still people that actually inhabit those lands, that still go out there for sightseeing, you know. But when America's totally annihilated and taken out, there's not going to be nothing left here. It's going to be totally and most desolate. I will lay thy cities waste, see? And thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord, Yahweh B'Shem El-Shai, because the Lord is coming to deliver us. That's why no man will be able to buy us. No man will be able to help us. Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred. Let's look up this word, perpetual. You had a perpetual hatred. Iwalam, which is an age, or a constant, or an everlasting hatred. Long duration, antiquity. It goes back to antiquity. We can go back as far as you want to go back. We can go back all the way to the Garden of Eden with the man that was called the serpent and Adam. We could take it up to Cain and Abel. Cain being Esau in the later on in the reincarnation, and Abel being Jacob later on. We could take it to Esau and Jacob, or Jacob and Esau in the future, and we could take it up to today. You know, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, which are the Israelites, and you so-called white people, which are the Edomites. That hatred has been going from way back then. You never forgot. It's something in your spirit that always reminds you when you see Jake, especially the tribe of Judah, to put mad hell on them. It says futurity, meaning the future, forever, ever, everlasting. So even to this very day, perpetual, old, ancient world. All right, so let's go back. You have had a perpetual what? Hatred. Ayabah. Enmity. Hatred. What did the Lord say? Did he not say? Hold it now. Let's go to Genesis chapter 3 and 15. I'm going to start at 14. And the Lord said unto the serpent, which is an actual man, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, because they are cursed above every beast. They're the lowest form of man on the planet, viler than the earth. And above every beast of the field, upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life, because they're going to be in a constant state of confusion. Because although they have the world's wealth, although they have the records of everything, they still can't figure out that they're going down. They know, but they don't know. Salakia. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. So it said what? He will put enmity between thee and the woman, meaning between your seed and the seed of Israel later on. This ain't talking about the Eve. This is talking about the actual Israelites that will come later on. And it began with what? With Cain and Abel. Because when Adam planted his sperm in Eve, the children that came out of that came what? They came out fighting against each other. Especially when you bring it up to date during the time of Jacob and Esau. It says, and between thy seed and her seed, it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So the Lord says he's going to put an enmity. So you had a perpetual enmity and hatred. Why? Because it goes all the way back to antiquity. Back during the time of the Garden of Eden. The serpent seed and the sons of God's seed, which came out of, the serpent seed came out of the serpent, which is an actual man, and the children of God came out of Adam's loins. I mean, they both came out of Adam's loins, but they were separated. Cain had the seed of the wicked, and Abel had the seed of the righteous. But Abel was killed, and we believe through the Spirit he was brought back as Seth. And Seth had the children that had, which were the sons of God. All right? So going back, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, and the time when their iniquity had an end. See? You should have never put your hands on the children of the Lord, man. He said, touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm. He that toucheth you toucheth the apple of the Lord's eye. So you in trouble, Jack. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, I will prepare thee unto blood. Let's look up the word prepare. Prepare, Aisha, to make, to do, fashion, accomplish, make. Now, what does that bring to mind? Let's go to Romans chapter 9 and verse 22. What if the Most High, willing to show his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction? So these devils are the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction. Let's go from there real quick to the book of Proverbs 16 and 4. The Lord hath made all things for himself, yea, even the wicked for the day of evil. So the Lord took out of one lump, which was Isaac, and he created one vessel unto honor, which were the Israelites, and another vessel unto dishonor, which were the Edomites, the E's. So he said, what if the Most High, willing to show his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction? They were tailor-made for destruction. That's why they do the things that they do. They can't do right. Let's go to Jeremiah 13. They can't do right, man. It's not in their makeup. It's not in their DNA. It's not in their spirit. Jeremiah 13:23. Can the Ethiopian change his skin? No, but you leave it to this devil, they can bleach it now. Or the leopard his spots. Leopard can't change his spots. Then may you also do good that are accustomed to do evil? No, you can't do good because you're accustomed to doing evil. And the scripture said, let favor be shown to the wicked, yet will he not learn righteousness. So now let's go back So the Most High said he's going to prepare you for blood. And blood shall pursue thee. See, now you're being pursued by blood. That's why there's so many deaths among Esau now. But that's just the beginning. Wait till America, Babylon the Great goes down, when the Lord destroys it. And we get your ass in slavery. And when the Lord gives you into our hand in slavery, then you're really going to feel the wrath of the Lord upon you. Salaki for a minute. You're really going to feel it then. So blood is going to pursue you because you shed the blood. You salivated at that moment. You know, you were happy. You jumped up for joy. You and the other nations, but especially you. Sith thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. So you're going to have blood pursuing you. So from generation to generation, that blood that you kill is always pursuing you. But you haven't paid for it yet. You see? You got to pay for it. Because it still went unanswered. So the word for pursue, radap, to be behind, follow after, pursue, persecute, run after. So it's going to be behind you like a shadow. I don't give a damn how fast you are. I don't give a damn how good you can juke somebody on the football field. You can't escape your shadow. Your shadow's always going to be there if you're running. You know, you can't outrun your shadow. So that blood is going to be on your ass like a shadow until you pay. To pursue, put to flight, chase, dog, attend closely upon. So let's read that again. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord power, I will prepare thee unto blood. You're being prepared unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. So if thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Thus will I make Mount Seir most desolate, because America will be most desolate. It's going to be uninhabited except by desert creatures, unclean animals, and cut off from it him that passeth out and him that returneth. Why? Because you devils are going to be cut off. You'll never rise again. You'll never put your face on another coin or dollar. You'll never put your name on any land ever again. You're finished, through, done. And I will fill his mountains with his slain men, and thy hills and in thy valleys. And you know what this reminds me of? Let's go real quick to Isaiah 34. Come near, ye nations, to hear, and hearken, ye people. Let the earth and all that is therein, the world and all things that come forth of it, because the Most High got a message. So listen up. For the indignation of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. That's why the Lord is amassing that great army over there in the Middle East. Because he's going to tear you nations' asses up too. But the first in line is Esau, the Edomites, the E's. He hath utterly destroyed them. He hath delivered them to the slaughter. And this is going to be after the destruction. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be what? Melted with their blood. So the Lord is going to destroy you. Esau, the nations, and all the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall roll together as a scroll. So here in America, when the missiles hit, you're going to see what they call mushroom clouds, which is what Isaiah and the Apostle John and them saw in their visions. The different prophets saw in their visions. And all their hosts shall fall down as a leaf falleth off from the vine. Because you see the leaf, you know, when the wind blows, a leaf just falls off. And as a falling fig from the fig tree, you know, when fruit is ripe, they fall off the tree. For my sword shall what? Shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea, and upon the people of my curse to judgment. So the Most High has got a beef with Esau, with the E's. All right? And Yahushua, the first person he's coming to visit is E. Tells you that in Isaiah 63:1. The sword of the Lord is filled with blood. Remember, since you don't hate blood, blood shall pursue thee. It is made fat with fatness and with the blood of lambs and goats. That represents your military men. With the fat of the kidneys of rams, for the Lord hath the sacrifice in Basra. See, so America is also known as Basra, and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. So America is going to be totally devastated and annihilated. It says, and the unicorn shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked with blood. Whoo, hot damn. It's going to be a great soaking, and their dust made fat with fatness. For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, and the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. Whoo. That's your ass, Esau. That's your ass, boy. Boy, that's your ass. So let's go back. Ezekiel 35 and 8. And I will fill his mountains with his slain men, and thy hills, and in thy valleys, and in all thy rivers shall they fall that are slain with the sword. And the Lord said he's going to make this place a plain. So everything you see, all the high-rising buildings and bridges and mountains and hills and all that, it's all going to be laid flat by the missiles. You know? It's the sweet one. Inside joke. I will make the perpetual desolations. See? When this place goes down, it's going to be perpetual desolation. No one will ever inhabit this place ever again. Tells you that in the book of Isaiah 14, Jeremiah 50, Jeremiah 51. And thy city shall not return, and you shall know that I am the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahshai. As we read in Isaiah 34. So your cities are not going to return. Because you said you're going to rebuild, right? But the Most High said, you shall rebuild, but I'm going to throw down. So the Lord's about to throw down now. He about to knock this castle of sand down. Because castles made of sand fall in the sea eventually. That was Jimi Hendrix. Because thou hast said, these two nations and these two countries shall be mine, and we will possess it, whereas the Lord was there. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahshai, I will even do according to thine anger and according to thine envy, which thou hast used out of thy hatred against them. See, this was hatred, man. The slave trade, that was total hatred. And even after the so-called slaves were freed up, you still were lynching them, giving them a hard way to go, even to this day. This was straight up hatred, this genocide that you've caused upon the people of the Lord, the controversy of Zion. Look at this. This is a picture of a devil smashing a baby against a wall. And another devil that hung 13 Taino, men and women, and lit a fire under them. And here you got them butchering, hacking them. You got to pay for all this, man. You got to pay for all of this, dog. This is not going to go unpunished. So let's go back. And I will make myself known among them when I have judged thee. And thou shalt know that I am the Lord, and that I have heard all thy blasphemies which thou hast spoken against the mountains of Israel. Yeah, because you still talking shit about Israel. The real Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians. Saying they are laid desolate, they are given us to consume. And that's what you felt like. Because since the Lord didn't do nothing to you, you thought that the Lord was with you. Tells us that in the book of Isaiah 55. Psalms 55. Thus with your mouth you have boasted against me. So you boasted against the Most High when you took us and you boasted against us. Because we are the Most High's inheritance. And have multiplied your words against me. I have heard them. Thus saith the Lord power, when the whole earth rejoiceth, listen good, I will make thee desolate. And the whole world is not rejoicing yet. So the Most High is going to take America out, put your dumb devil ass in slavery along with the other nations, and after a period of time that you serve slavery, you will be rounded up and burnt up And everybody's going to be rejoicing after that. Ding dong, the witch is dead. As thou didst rejoice at the inheritance of the house of Israel, because it was desolate. And you did. You and the nations rejoiced. So will I do unto thee. Thou shalt be desolate, O Mount Seir, and all Idumea, even all of it. And they shall know that I am the Lord. Now let's go to Numbers 35:33. So you shall not pollute the land wherein you are, for blood it defileth the land. And the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. And that's the bottom line. So you got to pay. And that's why we read earlier in Isaiah, which we'll get that after, Exodus 21:16. And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hands, he shall surely be put to death. And this is the penalty. And that's just for taking a slave, an Israelite slave. So you got a lot to pay for it, devil. Isaiah 26:21. For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood and shall no more cover her slain. Because the Lord is going to reveal you. Nahum 3:1. This is dealing with ancient Nineveh, but we could apply this to America. Woe to the bloody city. It is full of lies and robbery. The prey departeth not. Because we're still in your hands. We're still in your hands, devil. Habakkuk 2:9. Let's just go straight to the point. 2:12. Woe to him, destruction to him that buildeth a town with blood and establisheth a city by iniquity. And you have done this. America, Canada, the Americas, all the way down to South America, Central America, the Caribbean islands, America, Mexico, Canada. You have established this place upon blood. So destruction unto you. And no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to escape it. It says, behold, is it not of the Lord of hosts that the people shall labor in the very fire, and the people shall weary themselves for very vanity? So you're going to be wearying yourself for very vanity. The scriptures say that you are wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Meaning you having all these different counsels of what you should do to better this situation or that situation. It ain't going to work. It ain't going to happen. It's a direct plague from Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. Obadiah 1:10. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. And this is following you all the way from back then till now. Psalms 137:7. Remember, O Lord, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, race it, even to the foundation thereof. Yeah, you were helping the Babylonians destroy us. And the Lord is calling you, O daughter of Babylon. He's calling you Edomites, the daughter of Babylon, who are to be destroyed, because eventually you will be destroyed. Happy shall he be that rewarded thee as thou hast served us. Happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones. Just like you did to us. It's only retribution. Just like you did to us, it will be done to thee. See? You took our little ones and you dashed them against the stones. So what's going to happen to you? Happy shall he be, meaning us, that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones. So when the kingdom is established and we get your ass in slavery, your red, hairy ass in slavery, that's what we're going to be doing to you. You reap what you sow, man. You reap what you sow, you reap what you sow. That's it. That's all right. When the I haven't watched the lives after they process. I think after they process, if I'm not mistaken, they get fixed up, something like that, But them devils do that. Like I'm looking at the video output, as soon as I start, it's green. Then as soon as I start speaking, not too long after that turns yellow, then red. And most of the time, during the stream is always red, in the red. Sometimes it'll go back to green, but mostly it's in the red. But I think after it processes, if I'm not mistaken, it'll fix everything up. They're doing it on purpose. That's why they locking down on everything. But that's all right. Let them be the devil. All right. So pretty much, we could end it there. This has been you devils having an insatiable appetite for blood, but the Lord is going to deal with you. So with that, I pray that you brothers have been edified. Until the next time I say, Shalom. And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hands, he shall surely be put to death. And this is the penalty. And that's just for taking a slave, an Israelite slave. So you got a lot to pay for it, devil. Isaiah 26:21. For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood, and